For or against?
For.
You're live.
Okay, this is Senate Transportation, Wednesday, January 24th. We're back. We are still on car seats in S-187. So we have the Department of Health here to talk to us about the bill and the language, and maybe you can talk about what we heard from the lieutenant.
Yeah.
Where you guys are coming from on this.
Great. So for the record, Brendan Atwood, Policy Director with the Department of Health.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is David Englander's old position?
It is, yeah.
Oh, it is? Oh, so he's not with the Department
He's
of
no
Health?
longer the same. Correct. So thank you for inviting us to be here today. The department is very pleased to support this bill, which, as noted, would modernize Vermont's child passenger seat safety laws to make them more protective of children and to bring them into alignment with the best practices, evidence-based best practices. There are a few key facts that really underscore the imperative of updating this bill, passing this bill and updating the car seat laws. First, we know that motor vehicle crashes are a leading cause of both injury and death for children, both in the United States as well as in Vermont. From 2017 to 2022, over 500 children were injured and 16 were killed in motor vehicle accidents in Vermont. We also know that nationally, about 50% of child motor vehicle injuries and fatalities were associated with the improper use of car seats.
What was that again?
About 50% of injuries, yeah, we don't have Vermont data on that, but nationally, we know that about 50% of the injuries and fatalities are associated with the improper use.
Those kids are in the seats.
They might not be in the right side seat. They may not be in the appropriate seat. They might be front facing in a booster instead of in a rear and a front facing. So
We're not all the way buckled.
or not all the way buckled, exactly. We also know that motor vehicle injuries and fatality rates for children are higher in rural areas compared to urban areas, as high as 2 times greater in those areas. And I think most importantly, we know that the proper use of child passenger seats is effective. So according to the CDC, the proper use of car seats will reduce the risk of death by up to 30% and the risk of injury by up to 82%. Finally, we know that these laws work. Other states that have improved their car seat safety laws have seen increased compliance and reductions in child fatalities. So this provides a very simple step that will improve child safety, has broad support from organizations including the American Academy of Pediatrics, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, VTrans, and the Department of Public Safety. And these also adhere to recommendations from the Vermont Child Fatality Review Team and the State Highway Safety Office, as Lieutenant Ford just noted. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I guess the main question is what you already did when he was testifying about the difference. You know, he requested that language change. Yeah. How do you feel it lines up with what the Association of Pediatricians is saying?
So I'll defer to Stephanie. I think she's prepared to speak to that a little bit more. The department is frankly comfortable with either approach. We had initially proposed a height and weight limit. That's what you see in a lot of states, but based on our consultation with the AAP, we determined that their proposed language was sufficient as well. And so, you know, we're not the subject matter experts in this, and so we're happy to defer to those who are. I think, as Anthea touched on, we don't see a practical distinction that's all that significant here. We think that, you know, as I think Stephanie will articulate, it's really that the child stays in that seat for as long as possible.
Right. Okay. Well, we can hear from Stephanie unless anybody has questions for Mr. Atwood. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Didn't hear the testimony though.
Well,
I filled her in a little bit.
Oh, you did.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Stephanie Winters. I'm representing the American Academy of Pediatrics Vermont chapter. I'm also the Deputy Director of the Vermont Medical Society. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here for the testimony earlier. I was upstairs, but Brendan did fill me in, so I'll be able to, I'll go through my testimony and then maybe come back to talking a little bit more about the question.
Just for your introduction, you also work at the Department of Health in addition to.
I do not.
Okay.
No, just and we both the AAP Vermont chapter and the Vermont Medical Society are physician membership organizations that represent the patients and healthcare in Vermont. So both organizations are in strong support of S187 and the much needed updates to Vermont's child safety seat laws in Vermont that the bill includes. Motor vehicle crashes are now the second leading killer of children older than 1, surpassed by firearm violence. Yet state legislative efforts nationally to improve child passenger safety standards have remained stalled. And so missing from many state child passenger laws, including Vermont's, is a requirement for safety seats to be rear facing up to age 2 and rear seat requirements for older children. While great progress has been made on the state level to keep children safe, more advocacy remains to be had in child safety and injury prevention. In 2018, 2 committees of the National AAP, which represents 67,000 pediatricians across the country, approved a set of recommendations, including infants and toddlers are safest when they're riding in the rear, facing the rear of the vehicle. Young children should ride in car safety seats with a harness up to the highest weight or height allowed by the manufacturer, and that's kind of where we started talking about a little bit, but we know that there's a lot of variability between car safety seats. School-age children should ride in belt positioning booster seats until at least 8, or until the seatbelt fits correctly as described by the AAP and NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And all children should ride in a rear seat until age 13. And as
again?
all children should ride in the rear seat until age 13.
So in the rear of the vehicle.
The back seat, yeah,
Back seat.
not in the front, yeah. We know that, as Brendan outlined, that child safety seats reduce the risk of death and injury when they're used correctly. And I think the public education campaign will certainly help in talking about the effectiveness, the importance, and the right way to use child safety seats, because it is complicated. They're all so variable, they're all so different, and we want to make sure that they're used right. There's strong evidence that child safety seat laws are effective in increasing child safety seat use, coupled with the public outreach campaign included in this bill. We believe these updates will save lives of our youngest Vermonters. So the AAP Vermont chapter and the VMS strongly support optimal safety for children and adolescents of all ages during all forms of travel, and we support S187, which includes evidence-based recommendations to optimize safety in passenger vehicles for all children from birth through adolescence. So I'll just talk a little bit about the height and weight recommendations. The National AAP changed their recommendations from 2011 when they came out with a policy. In 2018, they came out with recommendations removing the height and weight based recommendations. And while they still counsel on that in the office with families, it's much more difficult to enforce the height and weight limits in law, particularly as the height and weight limits of child seats vary, as we said. I was joking with Brendan that we should put in a law about universalizing child safety seats so that they all meet certain standards, including their height and weight. And then also children fit in seats differently. So if you have a 57-inch child and the torso is longer, the legs are longer, but they still fit in the seat or they don't fit in the seat, it's easier to go based on an age where there's a developmental sort of milestone, and it's also safer. I think if we're talking about enforcement versus education versus safety, I think we really want to go with this what's safest for the child, and the AAP committees have determined that the age milestone is a better gauge of that.
Is part of this sticking with just the age to simplicity, that does it easier for parents to remember?
Yeah, it's complicated. I've been talking with some friends who are like, this whole, I have to read the pamphlet that comes with the seat, and then are they outgrown? I don't know, this parent's doing this, and am I supposed to be doing that? And parents are really confused, which is why I think the public outreach campaign will be helpful. But again, we want to do what's safest for the child versus what's maybe the most enforceable, because I'm not sure height and weight are really enforceable when a you're looking at a child either. So I think really just making sure that we're doing what's the safest.
Senator Ingalls?
Yeah, I just want to support this bill, and I just want to know what I support is right. That's at the end of the day. I don't want to make that decision. I don't want to even have to be forced to make that decision. I just hope that all you get together and bring us the bill that is the best bill, the safest, what it's supposed to be, and just be done with it. And I'll say, okay, yes. I just don't want to make those decisions.
Senator Kushner?
Well, we heard testimony, earlier that you didn't hear. And there was concern about the fact that we do have a number of children, they might have the age, but, because of weight, and we do have children that in fact are heavier than you might like for their age, or they might have some health condition that's contributing to it. And so the testimony was to use an age or of the weight. And I guess that would be part of what you got briefed on. Obviously, age is the most simple, most verifiable, so to speak. Do you have thoughts about, the fact that we do have children that probably, if you looked at their weight versus their age, would be outside the boundaries sort of the specifications. So that's what, that was the concern that we heard earlier. And I just wondered if you had thoughts on it.
I mean, what I would say is that I believe the language says age or the manufacturer's height weight limit. And so if that child is,
You think that would take care of it?
I think that would take care of it.
Right, the way it's kind of, where I was just reading that,
Yeah.
it seemed like it's 5 years, but then down lower, it says until they reach the height or weight limit of the.
Right, so
I think
it's
that
safest
would
for
deal
them.
with those outlier.
Absolutely, because it's safest for them to be in that seat up to the limits of that seat, regardless of, the extenuating factors. And so I think that would take care of that issue.
And is that your understanding too?
Yeah, so you're saying if you are, let's use the first example, if you are a child under 2 years of age, you're supposed to be rear facing until you hit the sort of requirements of the child safety piece to be rear facing. So that means that if you're in your bucket seat and you tap out, you're gonna go to a convertible seat, and that's gonna say that you can be rear facing until you're way more than, I think they said that one was 22 pounds. And then if you do happen to hit the upper bound of the manufacturer requirements on either height or weight, but you're under 2, then you could flip to be forward facing. You would then fall under subdivision 2, and then you would need to be forward facing until you were 5, or you tap out for the forward facing.
So the language, could you restate it, or the manufacturer's?
Yeah, so you need to be, if you're under 2,
Right.
you need to be rear facing until you exceed the manufacturer specifications to be rear facing in a 5-point harness. So if you tap out on that bucket seat, which is gonna, I think, have the lowest ever weight limitations, mine happens to go up to 35 pounds, which I could never pick it up with a 35-pound kid in it. But then you would need to switch to a different car seat. The convertible one would have a higher weight or height limitation, and you would need to be rear facing until you hit 2. And then it would be up to the parent to make the decision to flip their child, and then they would fall under subdivision 2, and then it's the same analysis, except your ceiling is 5.
So it seems like that language in that section
Yeah.
would address the concern.
Because if we pick 49 inches or we pick 40 pounds, then you get somebody that's 50 inches or 41
And then you got the
pounds.
variability among the seats and,
Yeah, so I think, although I respect Lieutenant Fortin's experience and comments, I think we're dealing with the issue that he was addressing. Any other questions for Stephanie?
no, we're not doing sunscreen.
We're not gonna do.
I almost started writing the sunscreen part and then I reread, I was like, oh phew. I didn't think they'd really want to hear that in translation.
I was very glad we weren't gonna do the demonstration.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for
Thank
your
you.
work on
Yes,
this.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think the easiest thing is to just, if we seems like we're all supporting it, that we would just
Yeah.
fold it in.
I just wanna get the language right, I don't wanna make this person feel good, this person, I want whatever's safest for the child. That's what I wanna agree to and be done with it.
Oh, and Brendan, and then I'll go to you. Is the quick question, you're okay with the study, or not a study, the public outreach up?
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. We actually, the department does all that work already, so it would just require some updates to the materials and the outreach campaign that we already do. So we are comfortable with that.
I think most hospitals actually ensure that there's a car seat when that infant leaves.
Yeah, we
Right.
it's generally offered, speaking from my own personal experience, it's a service that's offered. I don't know if you're required to take that on.
If you were required to, then you could leave your child behind and.
I'll raise it for you.
You're right.
Show up when they're 18.
Yeah, there are times when that might be enticing.
Yes.
Before you roll it in, I think everyone here that is speaking about this bill, would agree that there is a small typo, but a significant typo on the top of page 4 of S-187. It says, for purposes of, being restrained in the safety belt, it says under 17 years of age, it should say under 18 years of age. It used to be a child 8 through 17. It should be under 18 years of age. That was just an error in the drafting, going from a range to a upper ceiling. And then in terms of the public outreach campaign, the governor's highway safety program no longer exists. It's the state highway safety office. So unless you want them to consult with someone who doesn't exist, I would update. So before you take the language and put it anywhere, those two changes should probably be made.
No, if you could make those 2 changes and then put it in the list of miscellaneous,
Yeah.
or just add it to the miscellaneous Indeed bill.
Then it won't get lost.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? We succeeded? Yeah. Okay, well, that is all we're gonna talk about on this, and we'll just add that to the miscellaneous next, but I keep calling it miscellaneous D&D. And we're gonna hear about our coordinate system at 11. Are they coming in person, Megan, or they're doing Zoom?
They went back and forth. They were gonna be on Zoom. Now they're on their way here because one of them lost power.
Oh,
So they're winging their way here.
Power.
okay.
Hopefully we'll be here by 11.
Is your management power outage or what?
I do not know. That was not part of the email.
We lost power in Williamstown. My thing keeps going off telling me, this lost power, it's
Oh,
restored, it's lost.
Oh, really?
I don't know.
Okay, well, I guess we'll take another 10-minute break.
Thank you, folks.